You are listening to Demystifying Organizations. In partnership with McGraw-Hill Education, I'm your host, Jeff Schatten. Before we get started with today's guest, just a note, if you have questions or comments, you can email me at jeffshatten1@gmail.com. You can tweet me at jeffshatten. If you like this podcast, press the subscribe button and make sure to rate it on iTunes so that other people can find it. My guest today is Horst Schulze, who's one of the founding members of the Ritz Carlton Hotel Company in 1983. There, Mr. Schulze created the operating and service standards that have become world famous. During his tenure at the Ritz Carlton, Mr. Schulze served as the President and COO, responsible for the $2 billion operations worldwide. Today, Mr. Schulze serves on various boards and acts as a consultant across industries. He joins me today on the podcast today to discuss his new book, Excellence Wins, which was just published last month. I'd like to welcome to the Demystifying Organizations podcast, Horst Schulze. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
I'm happy to be with you. Thank you.
So I thought we'd just start with some of the things from your childhood. How did you end up thinking about the hotel industry and what drew it to you?
Funny enough, I don't know how I started thinking about it because I came up with the idea, talking to my parents when I was 11 years old. That was kind of very strange because I lived in a small village in Germany, never had been in a hotel. In fact, I had never been in a restaurant before. There was no hotel. And I must have read something about it and was totally possessed about it and kept on pushing it with my parents till finally they reluctantly gave in because work in hotel business was not very respected. The respected thing to do at that time in Germany was a technical job. So after they knew I was relentless about it, they found a program, a government program. I went to a hotel's preparatory school for 6 months, and from there we were placed into hotels as a busboy. And so I started working in the hotel business when I was 14 years old.
And so what was attractive about the hotel business? As all your other options.
I really don't remember what it attracted me, but I saw something, frankly, I saw something glamorous. I saw something exciting. I saw, as a child, I could see, for some reason, I don't know why, a global business where I can, and because I probably would have read about guests from all over the world to be in a hotel or something like that. And sure enough, I ended up in the best hotel in the region, which unfortunately was 100 kilometers away from home, which was very far at that time. So I left my home when I was 14 to live in a dorm room in the hotel 100 kilometers away with a few other kids, and worked washing dishes, cleaning shoes, cleaning the restaurant, etc., etc. So that was kind of my life at the time.
Yeah, because when you're writing, it comes across as just how much you love this, which stands in contrast with how we think of most people entering at the lowest level of a hotel.
Yeah, for some reason, I thought it was wonderful. And when I got there, of course, a key element that happened, my parents kept on warning me, finally, when the decision was made, that this was a very fine hotel, that only very important people go there, that we couldn't go there ever. So behave yourself accordingly, etc., etc. You know how that is, parents. And when I came there, I was very fortunate. There was first of all, the general manager talked to us and told me the same thing. All of us are servants here. The guests are very important, fine ladies and gentlemen. And don't be jealous, don't be envious. And then the next thing I meet is the maitre d' who was kind of the key of the hotel. He was in charge of everything that had to do with food and beverage in the hotel. And he told us day one and kept on, mind you, at that time at 40, and it went over my head, but he kept on telling us, don't come to work for work itself. Come to work to create excellence. Wow, what can you do? See excellence with washing dishes and cleaning floors and so on. But after a while, I got it. And that was specifically around this maitre d' that you can, no matter what in life, you can define yourself as a person of excellence by being excellent. And he lived that. He was the example. So I was very lucky to have a mentor like that helped me to finally realize it doesn't matter who you are. In fact, I wrote an essay around that, which I called "We Are Ladies and Gentlemen, Serving Ladies and Gentlemen." We are ladies and gentlemen, just like guests are. If we are excellent in what we're doing, and we are defining ourselves as such, or we may sentence ourselves to be servants by not being good, by not.
And
so yeah, that was kind of the foundation, which was really created by this maitre d', this fine mentor that I had.
And so what specifically did you take from him that you brought to the Ritz Carlton that was this striving for excellence?
Yeah, but this very reason, when this gentleman entered the room, the restaurant, he would have never entered unless he looked perfect. Everything was excellence about him. And I could sense in the room, and now mind you, I was told so often, we are nothing but servants here. But so when I suddenly realized, wait a minute, the guests are proud when he comes to their table. We, the employees, think he is the most important person in the room. But so did the guest. And once I came to that realization, that a light was switched on. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, no matter what I do in my life, I can define myself as an excellent human being, as an excellent professional, even if it is washing dishes. And as I said, I wrote an essay around that, and I named it "We Are Ladies and Gentlemen, Serving Ladies and Gentlemen." Unless we serve in a way where we don't deserve to be respected as ladies and gentlemen. And because I got an A in it, it stuck with me. Well, mind you, consider it was the only A I ever had. As an educator, as a student, that was a major moment. And so it stuck with me. In fact, the teacher read it to all the faculty. Everybody came in, and I had to read the essay about defining yourself. And so it stuck with me, and I used it as a motto. And in fact, when I started Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, I forced it as the motto of the company. We are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen.
So I want to kind of frame some of the things that you're talking about in terms of how we think of management. And there's one thing in particular that you do that takes a lot of the management theory and puts it on its head. So we have this idea of what's called Theory X and Theory Y management. And Theory X, that's a management philosophy. And Theory X managers, they hypothesize that workers are naturally lazy, that they do not want to show up to work, and that the only way that you can incentivize them is with carrots and sticks. So you can offer more money to induce them to do good things. You can hit them with sticks, so fire them, demote them, penalize them in order to prevent them from doing what you consider to be bad things. This is in contrast with Theory Y management. Whereas Theory Y management assumes that people want to seek responsibility, that human beings, no matter who they are, they pretty much want to do good things. They want to accomplish their tasks for its own sake, and that if you empower them to do so, that they'll take the responsibility. But here's the thing with this splits, is that we tend to think of the what's considered lower level jobs as being naturally in the theory X environment. So this would be, right, as you described, a dishwasher, maybe a doorman, or what's deemed higher level positions, maybe let's say a Google engineer. The philosophy tends to be more towards a theory Y environment where they're given a lot more autonomy, and it's assumed by many managers and leaders that people on the higher end of work, that they're internally motivated, and you kind of take odds with that. So I just wanted to kind of frame that in a management theory, and then allow you to explain like how you think of that.
Well, let me tell you something. X is management, and Y is leadership. It's that simple. And let me tell you something absolutely unequivocally. I can tell you X is wrong. I have opened up over 50 Ritz-Carlton hotels, and each one was rated number one in their market segment around the world. We were number one in Japan, number one in China, number one in Germany, etc., etc., etc. How did we accomplish that? With leadership. Very simple. I can give you one example of where X is totally unequivocally wrong. I said in each hotel, mind you, in many cultures, in many countries. I was in many locations, in different cultures. We were voted everywhere number one. And here is one thing I experienced in each location. I made it a point that I opened every Ritz-Carlton hotel and did the orientation. Everyone that we bought, started new, took over, whatever. I started the orientation. On the third day of the orientation, I sat down with department by department. Please hear that. That means I sat down with the dishwashers, with the marketing department, the financial department, one after the other, and had the same discussion around the world in many countries. I asked the employees, I told the manager not to say a word, to sit by. I asked the employees, the dishwashers, or the maids department, what do you want, you employees, what do you want your department to be 6 months from now? They all answered with the same word. Around the world, each department. And the dishwashers answered, we want to be the best. They didn't say, I want to be a lousy employee. They said, we want to be the best. And I asked them, what does that mean to you? And they said all the things I would have been embarrassed to ask them. We want to be the most efficient. We want to be the cleanest. We want to be the most respected, etc., etc., etc. They basically wrote their mission statement. When they were finished with that, after about 1 hour, I put notes on the flip chart. I said to the manager, stand up. I said, he is your manager. Let me give you his job description. He is here to help you to accomplish what you established you want to be, but he is not allowed to compromise it. So here are employees in every country, the lowest of the least paid. They said, we want to be excellent.
Right. So what you're doing, and that's amazing, right? So what you're doing is you're empowering employees at all level, but to come up with the mission themselves and not from a top-down manner, right? So for most companies, what you would have in that scenario is that the CEO or the CFO, whoever's coming in, says, here are the values that we have in a PowerPoint presentation. Here's how you're going to accomplish them, and you also flip that on its head.
We don't even tell them why. Adam Smith wrote a study. Besides Wealth of Nation, he wrote a study on the human being. He came to the conclusion that people cannot relate to orders and direction. And people can only relate to objective and motive. And what do we do 300 years later? We give orders and directions. Instead, and he defined with that analysis, he defined what leadership is versus management. Management gives orders and directions. And leadership gives objective and motive, and make sure that the motive of the organization matches the motive of the employee. And how could it not? But how could the employee understand it unless I communicated with it? Here's our objective. The motive is it so we grow, so you have opportunity, so we have more income, so you have more income, so we have more guests, so you have more income, so we are respected, so you're respected, etc., etc. That is the leadership piece. Management just said, do it or else.
And so, how did you deal with in an organization of that size? Given that you had very much a theory Y environment, how did you deal with maids or on kind of the lower level of the organization who either were freeloaders or who did not perform up to task?
Of course, I lay it out very carefully all in my book there, but in short terms, and it takes a longer explanation. But what we did is we established clearly the first day they came to work, we told them the vision of the company and asked them to join us. All employees, join us. Don't come to work here for the function that you have. You're human beings, a chair on which we're sitting, fulfilling a function, but you're human beings. You're joining us for an objective, for a purpose. You are part. I'm inviting you to have a purpose here of excellence. And here's the motive for the purpose. And you will benefit from that purpose. And here's who we are. And with other words, we truly aligned them. We didn't use the buzzword, which is everywhere around, alignment, and nobody is aligned. We truly aligned them behind the objective and thinking and motives of the company. And then we aligned them behind the expectation of the customer. So they were there. So, but then what we went on, then of course we also taught the process, the function. But then we went on, we kept it alive. You cannot go to work. Mind you, we're 24-hour business. And every shift before you go to work, you again have to hear the gold standard of today. And we explain again, when we have 24, today you may hear standard 11 or standard 12. Standard 12, which is if a guest asks direction, don't point, take him there. That is again taught today, and 24 days it's taught again. But we don't just
Yes, I want to clarify that point, which is that, so you write about this in the book, that every day the employees do a team huddle and they go over one of the 24 principles that's core to the Ritz. And part of what that does is that, so culture is something that's very difficult to do in one day of orientation or even 1 week of orientation. Because after a while, you end up where somebody's been at a place for a year or 2 years or 5 years. And it's been a long time since they went through orientation. So one of the most common practices that's really strong is to reintroduce a cultural item on a constant basis.
Tell stories around. Don't just read it. But here's a guest wrote a letter about this, or here's an incident that happened relative to this gold standard that we have. And at the same time, we always spend 2 minutes every day to explain what is going on in the company, because so they feel part of the happenings of the company. We have a new deal. We're signing a hotel in China. Or whatever is new, we tell them, we let people know they're connected. They're not just fulfilling functions for the company, but they're actually a part of the company. And of course, that's called leadership. Now, the managers who just force things also are very successful. I'm not saying that, but I submit to you that the leader will create much more success long term.
I want to draw on one of the practices that you implemented that I think so typifies how you view the service orientation. You explain a practice that you implemented where anyone working at the Ritz has a $2,000 allowance to spend on a guest for any reason and does not have to go ask management for permission. Why did you implement that kind of a policy?
It is my very strong belief that the company really does 4 things and should concentrate on 4 things they're doing. Number 1, keep the guest. And number 2, 3, and 4 cannot interfere with number 1. Number 1, what you do is keep the guest. So you create all kind of process around there. Number 2, you get new guests. Number 3, get as much money as you can from the guest. Oh, wait a minute, without losing them. That means you give them value. And number 4, be efficient. Back to number 1. That is the key. Everybody knows in the hotel, I am here to convince the guest to want to come back, even if something negative happens. So if that means I have to empower my people so that they can keep the guest that has a negative experience. I give an example. The guest comes for breakfast in the morning. The waiter or the hostess says, I hope you had a nice stay last night. And the guest said, no, I didn't. My TV didn't work or whatever. In that moment, the waiter owns that TV and should say, "Forgive me, I feel very bad, so I will buy you breakfast." In that moment, I made a guest that I was potentially going to lose. I made him loyal even more than he was before, and I create a guest that is amazed and will tell other people about his great experience. That the waiter said, "I am sorry, forgive me about the toilet or about the TV," and he made sure that the waiter makes sure that it gets fixed and bought me breakfast. Now, I did that for an economic reason. I knew that the average age of my customer was 43 years old, that they have a chance to travel 30 more years on business. I knew how often they stayed in a given hotel. I knew there could be a value of about $150,000 to $200,000 each guest. So why wouldn't I empower my people to keep them? That's
right. So I love the part where you say, "Forgive me." So the waiter is going to say, "Forgive me for the toilet issue." Why would the waiter say,
because
"Forgive
he
me"?
owns the complaint. He is part of the hotel. He is not just a waiter. He is part of the hotel. And by the way, we certified each employee, and again, I explained that very careful. Each employee in our hotels was certified for problem resolution. And we know that 96% of complaints, whoever the guest tells it to, the guest just wants to get rid of the frustration. And whomever tells it to wants to accept that person, expect that person to accept his complaint. So in this moment, we got rid of the frustration, we got rid of the complaint, we amazed them, we awed them by saying, "I buy you breakfast," and we have a loyal customer from there on.
So I just want to get your input on. So the Ritz Carlton has very high margins. So for every customer for every customer who comes and stays, there's Ritz Carlton has money that it can throw at problems. What would you say about a company like, let's say, a McDonald's, or or fill in the blank with another company, or a grocery store, or a Walmart, that they just don't have the margins to throw extra money at every customer that has an issue?
All right.
How would you advise them to structure?
Really refute this. That's the one thing that doesn't cost anything. To say, "I'm sorry, forgive me," doesn't cost a penny. That's the point. And it's the greatest driver of customer satisfaction is caring for the customer. And it's the very thing that doesn't cost anything drives customer satisfaction and customer loyalty more than the product and more than the timeliness itself.
So you would say, so for a low margin business they can't throw $2,000 at a customer to fix a problem, that it's much more about communication and more about empathy.
That's correct.
Than anything else.
The customer has three expectations when it deals with you. No matter what you are building, what you're creating. Let's say you're selling bottles of water. That's an easy example. I use it all the time. A car or buy a house, you will have three expectations subconsciously. Mind you, the subconscious is stronger than the conscious. You expect the product to be defect-free. So the organization should have processes to create a defect-free bottle of water. Number two, what you expect. Timeliness. You want it when you want it. You don't want to wait. And number three, you're expecting the person who gives it to you to be nice to you. And guess what? The being nice is a much greater driver of customer satisfaction and eventually loyalty than the bottle of water, than the defect-free product, because that's expected, the defect-free product, and the timeliness. But the caring, if there's real caring,
right,
that drives customer satisfaction. And that's the very thing that doesn't cost anything. I worked for a long time with Chick-fil-A and about customer satisfaction. And guess what? Their success is mind-boggling, not only around the piece of food that they have, a good piece of food, but around the fact that the employees look you and say thank you. They say, "It's my pleasure to do it." That is what Chick-fil-A is known for, and it is dramatic. Their success is dramatic.
I'd like to go over a piece of history that I think is really interesting. Nothing to do with the Ritz-Carlton. So McDonald's was, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, McDonald's was trying to get into Russia. And they were opened up their first franchise there, and they were doing orientation. And they found that the hardest thing for them to get the Russian employees to do was to smile and say, "Have a nice day," and say, "How are you doing?" Because it was so against the culture that was there. And all the other check boxes that McDonald's really cared about, they had no trouble getting their employees to do. But the interaction and engagement with customers was a real challenge for them, and they were able to do it. But it took a long time for them to get that piece.
In China, in Russia, and I didn't find it difficult. I didn't find it.
And
I opened 4 hotels in Russia. I didn't find it difficult at all. On the contrary, once you explain them as to why. And what is their benefit? What is our motive, and how their motive will connect with ours? They did it exceptionally well. I can't think of a place where people did it better.
That's interesting. Can you talk about, on another cross-cultural experience, about what it was like opening a hotel in Jamaica?
I did too. Here you are. I was warned of the terrible employees in Jamaica. I mean, literally, I was told by a hotelier, a non-hotelier, working on the island before I opened the hotel, that they only want to steal, they're not good, they're cheats, they're lazy, all this stuff I was told. And here I am the first day there with some cynicism and worried what it will be. And I never forget the new employees. As I told you, I went to all orientation and all training in the beginning. I was there. The new employees, 800 sitting in the room, and I tell them about to join us, to join our dream, to join us in an effort to ourselves be ladies and gentlemen, and act like ladies and gentlemen, and define ourselves as excellent. That every employee, every guest that they will touch, they're not only taking care of the hotel, they will establish the guest's opinion about Jamaica, how they behave, etc., etc. And I told them, be ladies and gentlemen. Well, interesting enough, the next morning I went for a jog. I went running by the golf course there. When I came back, I see those beautifully dressed people, like the people going to a wedding or to a funeral. They're looking so well dressed, everybody. As I come closer to the hotel, I realized they're going to the hotel. I realized they're going to the employees' entrance. And I went over there and talked to them. Because I told them, you are fine, ladies and gentlemen, act like it. They put their best dresses on. And they ended up to be absolutely delightful, wonderful, exceptional human beings, the employees. But, if I have cynicism and put them in a box of being no good, that's where they're going to be. But my goodness, it is not true. They too, when I ask them what you want to be, each department, they say, we want to be the best. We want to be respected. So it's not true leadership. And now mind you, it's very clear to me that even though they said in various locations, no, I'm not talking about Jamaica, I want to be the best. A few months later, some of them were not very good. Now the question is really, whose fault is that? The employees or leaderships who didn't take it in them? They had it in them. And we leadership should have kept it in them. So somewhere along the line, we failed and not the employee.
That's an amazing attitude. So some of this ties into what we call self-fulfilling prophecy, or the narratives that we tell ourselves. So if people wake up in the morning and tell themselves the narrative that they're part of something that's great, if that's how they wake up and that's what they tell themselves, they actually behave differently than if they wake up with a feeling of cynicism. If they wake up in the morning and the narrative that they tell themselves is that they don't have self-value, they don't have self-worth, and then people will act like they don't have that they don't have value and self-worth.
That at the same time, while I'm blaming management leadership, at the same time, you can also blame the individual. I know that because on the end, the most important part of leadership is leading yourself toward excellence and make a decision and don't respond to the feeling, but become in control of your feeling get control of your own feelings and make the decision, I'm going to like going to work. In the end, that's nothing but a repeated decision, and pretty soon you're going to do it. At the end, that is self-leadership, which at the end is the most important leadership there is.
I want to draw a comparison to Netflix. So Netflix has what's considered a famous or maybe infamous slide deck where it discusses the values and culture that Netflix holds. And one of the lines that it says is that we are a team, not a family. And that they don't treat each other like family members. They treat each other like they're players on a professional sports team, and that they'll cut wisely. And they go on to explain why they create intentionally a very competitive, cutthroat environment.
It isn't a family, because you assume right away in it's family that you can be lax, but you're at work, and where there are systems and processes that have to be rigorously followed. Otherwise, the product will not be good or the outcomes will not be good and everybody will suffer. So I totally agree with them. What I don't like when people talk about team, when you start working, when you're a team and you start working somewhere and the new boss says right away, we're a team here, which usually is meaningless. It's meaningless because a team without objective is not a team. The whole definition of team is having a common objective, a common purpose, and helping each other toward that purpose. That's the whole definition of a team. So when the new job speech is we're a team here, but they don't tell you the purpose and the objective of the company, then that is a lot of garbage, and it happens all the time. And after they say we're a team here, we turn them over to fellow workers to learn the ropes, and they're not even in the rope business. So this is a lot of garbage that goes on in companies, but it starts with the premise that the company hires somebody to fulfill a certain function, rather than hiring somebody to join your purpose, your objective, and your motives.
Right. So this is the idea of that there's just a few seats on the bus, and each seat on the bus is a vital role, and you need a unique person to fill that role.
Positions that function together like a great machine, and so you're really a team at work, not family. Family is a total definition of support and help for each other in all circumstances. Yes. But at the same time, be your own person and move your own direction.
Can you describe what happened in Pittsburgh with the doorman?
They went on strike. I went on strike and went out there, and of course it was cold winter day. So I said right away, grab some hot coffee, some hot chocolate, everything, and serve the picketers. They picketed with the whole team was picketing outside. So sweet rolls and stuff outside picketing. And of course, when the newspaper and the TV crews arrived, they said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, they're still our employees. They're still part of us. The fact that there's misunderstandings happens in the best of families, but certainly they happen at work, and it did happen. But we still care for them, and we served them hot tea. And of course, that was the story in every newspaper and every television station in a very positive way. That was a strategic decision. Obviously, that was also a good strategic decision on my part, but I really did care for them.
Because I think that's part of your character that strikes me as being so appealing in terms of leadership, is that most of the decisions that you do, at least as it comes across in your writing, is very much people and empathy oriented and putting human beings first, and also being strategic at the same time in terms of the organization. Is that a fair characteristic?
If you really look at the book, what I try to do, I try to first talk about one group of people, and those are the customer, the guest. Try to say how to look at them and how to find them, how to understand them. Next, I try to say, let's understand the employees. How do I hire them? How do you get them? How do you create processes so that they are always connected to you? It's all process oriented. And next, I talk about another group of people, that's leadership and management. I put them all together, and I wrote it in a way that, if frankly, And I haven't said that to anybody, but frankly, I wrote in a way that if a CEO reads it, he or she will have a bad conscience. Because the CEO is busy with legal suits and money and buying another piece of product and so on and so on. They're in such higher level business, they have no more time to think about the people issues over there, and they don't look at it for a long time. But I want to give them a bad conscience, so they look at it again. And at the same time, I try to write it as a story, so that when a young person reads it and reads that story, on the end has the tool to become successful. That's how I wrote the book, and that's what I was thinking about it. 3 groups of human beings, and who are the human beings who read it? The CEO. And I know how busy you are as a CEO. You forget all those things. You forget the basics. You're making a deal with. You have a lawsuit going on. There's an acquisition going on. There's a huge stuff going on that you have to take care of. And you're missing the stuff that really makes money. And I'm trying to make it clear in there. Concentrate not on the money. Concentrate on the things that make money.
On that note, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at jeffshatten1@gmail.com. You can tweet me at jeffshatten. If you like this podcast, press the subscribe button and make sure to rate it on iTunes so that other people can find it.